This is a JTP audio podcast.
Sometimes talking with friends feels like role-playing. Sometimes it feels like combat. Join us at the round table and roll initiative. This is Curmudgeons and Dragons. You know, let's do this whole thing again. It's fun. Let's keep doing it. Another episode of Curmudgeons and Dragons. I'm Jason Portizo. I'm here today with, let's see, who have I not started with? I think I'll start with all of you. We're here with Mr. Justin Franco.
Hi.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going. I've had a long and eventful couple weeks since the last time you recorded an episode.
Have you been practicing your voices?
I suppose. I kind of just gave up on it after that episode. Because, I realized I had lost a perfect opportunity to advertise Blue Chew without you cutting it out of the episode.
Yeah, I would have been helpless.
And there we go. I made up for it.
All right.
I'm glad you've remembered after all this time. Hello.
How you doing?
Oh, I've been doing a little of this and a little of that.
Nice. How's your cat?
If you say her name. Hey, what are you eating? Hey, wait, hold on.
Jack O'Connell's here.
Hey, I'm here. Hi.
How's it going, bud?
It's good. We'll talk for a little bit because I think Josie just died.
No, she's fine, but she's got a cat to scold.
I don't think that was her cat. I think it was her roommate she was dealing with.
The cat's good. The cat's fine.
How's your roommate?
So her roommate's name is Cat.
Was it your cat or your roommate who you just had to go yell at?
Oh, yes. The cat is my roommate.
No, roommates pay rent.
Doing yeah, well, she licks her butthole on camera.
I know, we saw it in the last episode.
Yes, you did.
Right.
Oh, the cat.
Right.
That's right.
None of our delightful listeners got to witness that, but you all did.
No, Justin has that on his own channel, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This episode is on the first week of the month. That means we are doing some RPG horror stories. You guys got some stories for me?
Yeah.
Oh, big time.
Nice. Let's roll up some Anish. That's a 10.
I got this many.
You can tell because Jack still has his shoes on.
Yep.
Josie, how low did you roll?
I have a 3. Can I roll again?
Do you have lucky points?
Maybe.
You made your bed. You lie in it. Even though I've seen your apartment on the camera.
That's not true. I usually do.
We got 12 over here.
16.
All right.
First is the worst.
Justin hasn't gone first in a while.
First is worst. That's what they say. All right. So I had a few. Most of what I could find over the last day or two had a lot to do with, rape and horrible misogyny and stuff. So I decided to go with this one. It's called That Guy DM and That Girl PC. So it was a few years ago in my first introduction to tabletop role-playing games with the Star Wars game. It was a party of 3. All of us were new to tabletops and the DM who had played before. After a good session 0 where he helped us make our characters and setting, we started off the game with me as a Force user with awesome weapons the DM gave us. I had some ancient lightsabers I found in the archives. The game went on fine for a few sessions when we lost our weapons. No problem, it's obviously part of the plot. So we struggle on without weapons for a while, before we're able to build/acquire some more. Then we go to a place where weapons aren't allowed. There was also a device in all the buildings that blocked force powers, and we had to leave suddenly so we can't pick up our weapons. Fine. We struggle on without and build/acquire more, when our ship crashes. The crash, which did no damage to the players, caused us to lose our weapons, including my twin lightsabers, which were on my belt hooks when we crashed. A nat 20 to search the wreckage, still couldn't find them. There are other ways to create drama than disarming us. I also ended up with the highest HP, so in combat I was usually targeted, no problem. I was a tank and had a very high defense, but the DM who only rolled behind the screen hit me on every single attack, but I'd always miss everyone else. I would also miss more than half the time. I was basically the punching bag for the group who was basically useless under the DM's rules. Then enter That Girl. For context, she didn't care about the game or Star Wars, but fancied one of the other players and didn't like he was playing the game and not paying her attention. Added on to this, the DM had a thing for her, so instead of making her own character, he rolled one up for her to speed things up. I glanced at her character sheet. She was an OC race who was resistant to every type of damage and had enough skill points. She was better than any of us at any skill and had access to a diplomatic bank account of 1 million credits. Bearing in mind, we were playing mercenaries who were trying to get cash. The only saving grace was because she didn't make the sheet, she didn't realize how OP she was. No matter what she wanted to do, the DM okayed it, up to and including getting a miniature crate dragon as a pet that was completely friendly to her, was big enough for her to ride and fly, and could physically drain people's health as food. Its favorite food source was me. 3 sessions with her playing and I was done. It took years before I got back into the game again because I thought that's what every session would be like.
Holy shit.
End of story.
That's a really easy way to
it's
ruin
very
a game
sad
for someone.
You hate to see it.
But I thought that one would be a refreshing change of pace from, people pooping themselves and then just the constant thing on that subreddit, which is just, horrible.
I wouldn't say
dark
refreshing.
Shit. I don't think we've had a story like that, though, where it's blatant favoritism. I think mostly it's just bad DMs or bad players.
Yeah,
it's
that's
a combo of both.
Right.
This is, are you seeing this shit? It's like, no, I'm approving this shit.
Yeah, the second I heard Nat 20 to search for my weapons and didn't find them, I'm
guys,
like, okay, so you're just being an asshole now.
A Dutch bag.
We need a general.
So what do you do as a player when you are clearly being targeted by the DM? I mean, he wasn't showing any of his rolls and everything was hitting against him. And, so he's clearly fudging everything. And it's very obvious that it was done on purpose. So at what point do you as a player just excuse yourself or bring it up? Because did it say how long this was going on for? Or was it?
He said he did 3 sessions with the female player involved in it. And then he gave up after that because he was just getting bullied on 2 fronts. But didn't really say. It said they went through, enough sessions where they lost and had to get new weapons like 3 times.
This is like days, weeks, years, but
yeah.
It'd be like the first instance of that happening. I would bring it up, be like, hey,
is this
the
for real,
man? Like, why are you bullying me through your DMing?
Like, hey, was that just really bad luck from me, or do we have a problem?
Yeah, and then if it continues, then I'm out. I think the main issue with a lot of these stories is it's poor communication. It's not out of the realm of reality to say that nerds sometimes aren't really good at communicating or expressing their deep down feelings.
Yeah, like a lot of these horror stories can be avoided if someone's just like, hey, don't do that.
Please.
Yeah. How about not?
What's cool. Blatant, and what's the opposite of favoritism where he's like just targeting the one dude?
Disdain.
Bullying.
So, bullying, just blatant bullying.
Assholes.
This is even before the girl got involved. Because obviously he's trying to show off for the girl, which that's a nerd move as it is.
Yeah.
But it was pretty bad before that.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden there's somebody to show off for, so it's be extra cruel.
Cruelty.
Oh, look at me. I'm the alpha.
That's what gets the ladies.
Have you guys played in any game that had anything close to that?
I've been pretty fortunate that I usually play with friends. I haven't been in any
the first game
like
I ever played in, the DM, who I no longer speak to, he was usually pretty good, but if he was in a bad mood or if he was tired, the tone would definitely be different, but it would target all of us. It'd be like if he wasn't in the best mood, he would just punish us for not figuring out the puzzles that he laid out for us. Everything would hit, our rolls wouldn't hit. There'd be no sort of any skill check wouldn't net us any sort of insight into how to solve a problem. But that's the worst of it. That's
a crazy way to take out aggression.
Moody fuck, yeah.
Just start killing some imaginary characters because you
had a bad day.
Because you want to have a power trip.
Right. It's on the way over there, forgot your fries.
Challenge your DM if they're pulling some bullshit.
Yeah.
DMs are people too, and you can punch people. All right, I think I'm up here.
Do it.
So, this story I found, the story itself is not super awful, which is great because a lot of these stories are. I'm curious what you guys have to say about it. I'm in a campaign with some friends, and one of our longtime players has begun DMing. After over a year playing together, it wasn't until this campaign that I realized this guy doesn't know most of the rules or structure of D&D. Here's a list of things that make this campaign fairly frustrating. 1. DM responds to most in-character conversations. I'd never witnessed this before. Every single conversation. One character says something to another character, and the DM responds. 2. The DM thinks it's funny to make sarcastic comments about every question we ask. Can I check for traps? No, I'm not going to let you do that. Just kidding, give me a roll. The first comment each week is annoying, but fine. By the third or fourth time, I just stop asking and tell him I'm doing things. 3. The DM has only a vague understanding of what each check should be. I've opened the book to the page where it literally describes the exact check I'm trying to do, and he'll decide it's something else. Or he'll decide things are just flat stat checks instead of investigation or history, so we lose out on the proficiency and expertise bonus. So you want to look for clues? Give me an intelligence check. 4. The DM refuses to learn anything about magic. I've dispelled 4 magical effects that worked in weird, vague ways, and every time the DM acts like I'm putting him on the spot to pick a spell when using Identify, or to flesh out the magical effect of what changes when I dispel it. Great, now I have to figure out this effect. The effect being a magical force field stopping us from easily progressing our cause. 5. Along those same lines, every enemy is melee based. There's no magic enemies, no dispelling my magic, no one who doesn't eat a fireball and die. I haven't taken damage in 6 consecutive combats, and my AC is 14. 6. The players spend most of the session speculating about things that don't make sense, and we assume there's some secret things going on for us to figure out, but in reality, the story just has plenty of holes. A whole city was terrified when we brought up the name of a pirate who had terrorized them. We killed the pirate, and nobody in town gave a shit, and all went back to being assholes. You know how I found out this she who won't be named pirate? I asked one person. I rolled a charisma check of 12. They told me everything I wanted to know. A great battle took place in the city, and we looked for survivors who witnessed it. Nope, turns out tens of thousands of people died with no survivors. What about their wounds? Cuts, bruises, quote unquote magic. Some didn't have any wounds at all. Some were still bleeding, but none were still breathing. 7. We fought a melee-based enemy that we spotted from 300 feet away. We decimated it before it got in range because it only had melee attacks. We were rewarded with a second one of these same enemies coming out of the bush right next to us. End post. So is this the worst game that's ever happened?
You know, I'm all for blaming the DM, but God, good Lord, that's just why
this person
stick around
obviously
that
has a
long?
long list of grievances. Like, yeah, just leave.
To only find 7 to
Yeah.
give us, right?
Yeah.
So the important thing here is that they played in a campaign together for over a year, but this is the first time this guy has DM'd, and clearly just never learned anything from being in that game for a year.
Well, just did 0 research
and wouldn't accept being challenged. That's another thing.
Yeah, it's not good.
Listen, I love new DMs. I like players DMing. I like people trying it out, but like also like do just like a little bit of work.
So like I said, this story
just a
isn't
little
like
bit.
super egregious. Like no one's losing friends over any of this, I hope. But the reason I brought this up is I want Justin and Jack, you guys especially, what were your first couple of DM sessions like?
I definitely didn't have a very strong understanding of the rules of magic when I first started DMing. And it's still like kind of a little bit spotty. I don't often, like when I do play as a character, I don't often play spellcasters. I mean, I'm getting it, but the more campaigns that I've been a part of and the more sessions that I've done, I take the time in my off time to like read the source material and try to figure out like how to run a better game. And also I've never been anti being challenged. Like I play with people that know the game better than I do, that have played the game for longer than I have. I often rely on players to like call me when I'm making a wrong choice.
That's what makes you a better DM, though.
Exactly. If you're just like not willing to grow, like why want a DM?
And if you don't know you're fucking up, you can't fix it.
My first sessions were with people who also didn't like. It was their first time kind of playing, so I got into it with people. So like it wasn't like I was DMing for like a lot of like like professional players, or, like people who've been playing for years. It was like kind of all of our first experience in it, so we kind of learned together. And then when I kind of like moved up to the big leagues, like DMing one-offs and doing like I mean I guess I have done tabletop like just like one-off days, DMing them. I mean I think they've gone fairly well. Like I just My main thing is like just always make sure that the people are having fun. Even if you have to like take pause and be like, oh hey, let me look it up or do stuff like that. Like just have materials around you. Just have a laptop. Dude, fucking Google is the DM's best friend. You can Google a question so quickly and find a very direct answer because chances are someone else had that question before.
And if you already own the
Someone
laptop,
else
it's
answered
cheaper
it.
than buying the book.
But it really is. I got a lot of free PDFs. I also bought all the books too.
Yeah, so did I.
They're nice to have.
I don't know. Like you want to make sure your players are having fun. Like there's no point in playing the game if you're not having fun. And when people take it too seriously is what ruins it. Or when people like don't. I mean, so there's a balance. You can't take it too seriously, but you should take it serious enough that
Still want to
you're
at least
still playing
like
a D&D campaign.
be not serious within the rules. Like you use the rules to not be serious about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's say a player who's been playing for about a year or two or so wants to DM their first campaign. What do you have any advice for that person?
Ask a DM. Ask someone you know who DMs. Like the books are great and all this stuff is great, but you're going to encounter a lot of stuff that aren't in the books. And it's way more helpful just to talk to someone who's DM. Be like, hey, like what are some tips, tricks, like stuff like that. And then they'll just talk about campaigns and things they came across. Like just talk to people.
And
It's
yeah,
not that-
I would
it's
say
not that
too,
hard.
just, if you're running your first ever thing, whether it's a one shot or a campaign, just know what kind of game you want to run and just have fun with it. Like,
Don't have one set path. Have a couple of options. Like,
yeah,
if you're saying you come to a fork in the road and you only plan for them to go right, and then you got to like hurt them to go right, it's going to ruin their experience. Like, have a plan to go left and have a plan to go right.
Or
Be
have the same plan
versatile.
happen no matter which way they go and don't tell them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can do that too.
yeah, be prepared, have fun, know what game you're playing, but also, don't get too caught up in rules. Like, I don't think there's anyone in the world that knows all of the rules. Like,
I know all
they
of
really
them.
exist more as they do exist as a template for, just having fun with friends. But I mean, yeah, if you don't know something, like Jack said, just fucking ask somebody.
Yeah, and don't be an
Maybe learn them barely enough to know some basic magic.
Learn that. I'm not saying don't learn them. I'm saying, yeah, don't be afraid to do something if you don't know them, but don't be arrogant enough to reject learning them.
100p.
100p.
So I actually don't have like that short of a one this week. I kind of have like not a Josie length one, but maybe half. Of the Josie story.
Listen,
It's got some circumference and heft.
Yeah, it's not going to take me 40 minutes to read it, but we should get through it pretty quickly. So the title of it is Some People in This Hobby Are Straight Up Psychos. Sigh. TLDR, Edgelord of the Week tried to satisfy his quote-unquote needs in a tutorial game for newbies. It's not as bad as you think, don't worry.
Real quick, that was the one I was going to read before I found that other one.
There you go.
Yeah.
I saw. I know that because it was posted today.
Yeah. I definitely didn't do this while we were doing our other episode. I remember things. I don't forget stuff. Shh.
Mine was posted
So-
earlier today. So
Yeah. Occasionally I'm running a Monster of the Week style beginner's game. Just some basic adventures with whoever shows up. These games are aimed at newbies to show them the ropes, of course, recruit some of them in other games. Since there's a lot of younger players, I keep things PG-13. I don't mind the occasional veteran player joining as well, as long as they're fine with sitting back while I tend to the younglings or helping out yourself. The younglings. RIP younglings. Now I gotta hold these two guys and how I kick them out. The cast is me as the GM. The Edgelord is the older newbie player. I suspect he wasn't new, just got kicked out too often. Elitist veteran player and RP elitist, absolutely full of himself, and some newbies that didn't say much, you'll understand why. My other table rules for these games are simple. No evil characters, only PG-13, and cooperate. Edgelord was immensely confused by my no evil PC rule. For a newbie, he had suspiciously familiar arguments against it. The evil character can be a great storytelling device and stuff like this. It's too complicated in a casual group of newbies. This game is meant to be as simple as possible, so I told him so and disallowed it. The elitist immediately jumped on that quote-unquote discussion with further arguments. How I as a GM can't interfere with player agency, blah, blah, blah. I shut that down too. Kudos. It's a tutorial group for newbies, for crying out loud. Want to play a storytelling epic about your edgy character? Find a different table then. 100%. These guys skulked, but was pretty clear I wasn't budging, so they agreed to leave it. Quest of the day was a bandit camp that got too dangerous to be handled by the town's guard because someone with magic seemed to be helping the bandits. The group moved out, dealt with some crazy druid, and arrested the rest of the bandits. All nice, clean PG-13 action. Edgelord wasn't having it, though. Before the guardsmen arrived to lock away the bandits, he took a female bandit aside for questioning But instead of asking a question, something like this came out. I want to cut all the tendons in her limbs and make her crawl and squirm on the floor with her useless limbs. The table was shocked.
Yikes.
Emergency banhammer was ready. I argued that it's pretty high on the scale of sadism, especially for this game, so I'm taking the character over as evil NPC, following the rule that evil characters are not allowed. Elitist immediately jumped to defend his buddy. At first, they tried to make a case how the bandit's life is inconsequential and shouldn't matter in any way what happens to them. I think it says a lot about their mindset if that's what you're going for to defend your deeds. Their second point was that the bandits would be executed anyway. Yeah, this isn't getting any better. The sad thing is they seem to believe this is as an overall acceptable mindset. IRL, I wasn't going to listen any further to their bullshit. I'm not entertaining anyone's murder boner. Banhammer was deployed for both. The end.
Finally, some good DMing.
Yeah, that's kind of, so I was like scrolling through a few and
Yeah.
like this was just posted today. So I actually did have one ready, but I rode through this one and I saw that it was an actual DM being like, oh no, like I'm going to be a good DM and basically tell people, because I mean, not to sound crass, but murder boners in Dungeons and Dragons is a real thing. And some people like to do like, because they're
Absolutely real
super
thing.
closed out or with, bullying that happened, like something kind of flipped the switch and they take it out in like video games and stuff like that. And it ruins games for people. I've had it happen once and I had a discussion with the person and it cleared up and we were fine. And I was lucky because usually it's the same thing of people saying like, well, it's just a bandit. It's just this, like, I don't care. It's like, no, it's not about what you're doing in the game. It's about how like what you're doing in real life is affecting the people around you. Like, yeah, it's a game, but you're also playing with people for their first time. It was a whole thing, but yeah. So good.
It's not cool in a campaign where that's not expected. And that's
especially
not
if you
okay.
say in the beginning, like, hey, don't be an evil person.
Don't-
And the guy's like,
Don't be
"Oh,
fucking
and
weird."
This is an example where the DM had clear set expectations. This is a tutorial for beginners.
Yeah.
This is not for you to, act out your sadism fantasy.
Yeah.
That being said, for experienced players who have already done all the goody good campaigns and want something different, I'm not going to say better or even more fun. They just want something that can scratch that
That they
itch.
haven't done yet.
If you want to
Yeah.
get a murder boner campaign and you all agree that like you're going to have like an evil NPC campaign, then go for it. No one's going to stop you from doing that. But don't bring your weird shit into a game with people's first time playing, especially because
Don't surprise people with that.
Yeah, in my opinion, it definitely seemed like these guys have played before and were probably kicked out and then just like brought that shitty energy to other people.
Yeah, here's an open table for beginners. Let's just lie and say we're beginners and they can't kick us out.
So you see a lot of that shit, especially, and like, I know it's kind of like a trope. It's like, tabletop shops and stuff like that. But, you see these kind of people in there. And it's true, though. There's a reason that stereotype got kind of created was because a lot of the times in tabletop shops and one-off and stuff, it's people who like their mom's dropping them off because they don't have their license yet and they're 30 years old and they have to live out like whatever they want to do around like a bunch of people who are playing for their first time. I've seen it plenty of times in campaigns.
Yeah, it's nothing worse than public anything. No, that's just in general. Nothing worse than the public
Hate
people
public.
out there.
People be weenies, dude.
But good on that DM for know the game you want to play. That shit ain't it. So
Yeah, see you later.
fuck you. Bye. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you're running a shop and you need a house DM to teach your beginners, that's the guy you want.
Yeah,
That'll set clear expectations and kick out the weird people.
I'm available
for him.
I'm available for hire.
I don't think you are.
For more than
No, I'm
just
not. I'm
DMing.
definitely not.
No.
Not
It's
until
it's hard enough sitting in my house for 2 hours, so I'm definitely not
Right.
available to DM for 10 hours.
not until like October.
Once the summer's over at the brewery, I'm having a hot boy summer right now. So once my hot boy summer is done, you can hit me up.
Josie's batting cleanup again.
Like I do.
You're rolling D20s, not like a D6 or something like that, right?
Yes, thank
She's
you,
just-
Captain.
I just
She's
want to
flipping a
clarify
coin.
that's not a D3.
She's rolling it. Nah,
Yeah.
she's rolling a D3.
It's not,
She's
you're
like
not rolling
flipping
a
a coin
D2.
back
You're
there
not
as
just flipping a
D2.
coin and getting a 1 or a 2. You can roll a D20.
I rolled the D20 again after you said, no, don't do it. You're fine. And I got a 4, so
You
didn't
sure it's a
matter.
D20? It has 20 sides, right?
Yes, it does.
I
Okay.
think from now on, Josie needs to roll like 3 D20s.
Just have
And
her
then
roll a
just
D100.
Add
Yeah.
the totals.
She's rolling a Mobius strip over there, a
Yeah.
D1.
She's going to roll the infinite dice and still get a
All
1.
sides are D1.
What you got for us?
Alrighty. Couple I invited copies my character and stole my husband's love of the game. Starting a new game with my husband and a new DM. The 3 of us had started off well, but felt we could have more people join, so I decided to tell my friend about our game. I'd excitedly told her about a character I was really having fun with playing. She was an Eldarin wizard who worked at the local library where the game started. Her claim to fame was that she had been at this massive library and she had read up to the V's. This justified her knowledge rolls. If it was a creature that started with anything after V, I never rolled, unless we could classify it under another letter, which had to be thought of on the spot on the first round right before combat started. She carried a huge book because her goal was to make the bestiary, a catalog of every creature that could be shared to every adventurer's library across the continent. So her whole reason for adventuring was to get first-hand knowledge of creatures. In turn, since she was a librarian, her focus was a quill, wand for rules purposes. She wrote her spells in the air or drew them depending on the context of the fight. She was a very no-nonsense person that protected her comrades and had an evil streak when she let loose on enemies that attacked her. Her pastimes were writing, dissecting the most recent creatures we killed to better study it and write notes. It didn't matter if it was sentient or not. At the time, I was also playing a second character since we had so few players. She was a human cleric super healer, but my RP focus and joy was on the Eldarin. Now, after telling my friend about all the fun I was having RPing this character and knowing their interest in D&D, I invited them to come to play. Got them in contact with the DM who would go over his house rules and help build them a character. Well, the day comes, we sit down to play, she introduces her character, and word by word, my heart sinks to the depths of my stomach. So I'm playing a tiefling warlock that writes and draws her incantations in the air with a stylus since it's my focus. She's a big bookworm at the library and carries around a book that is teaching her more about her pact. She is sweet and shy and normally wouldn't hurt a fly until you rile her up and she can really live up to the tiefling stereotype. I turn to the GM and he just has this shit-eating grin. Mind you, he cleared the characters before we played. I asked him, "You do realize that is almost my character, right?" "Yeah, I thought it was funny that you guys made such similar characters, so I let it happen." For me, this was another punch. He knowingly let a character come in that was a copy of the main character I was playing. My friend looked at me saying, "Oh, are we the same? I didn't realize that." "Well, it's okay because I'm a warlock and you're a wizard and we do things differently." I just wanted to facepalm, but at this point I took a deep breath and let it slide. But after playing my main, character became less and less fun for me, so I started RPing the healer more. This was the first of a few problems that caused me and my husband to decide to leave the group. Since this had been the first time my husband had enjoyed playing D&D, was with this group. That was until the husband's next character was introduced into play. He was a Deva warlord who was built as a duelist that teleports his enemies away from the party. It sounds helpful at first, but in reality it was just so he could take all of the glory, not to mention that divas are basically immortal depending on your interpretation. Being as my husband was a fighter whose abilities relied on enemies and allies being close, this completely shut down his class to a point that my husband's love of playing his character died.
Really ganging up on the DMs here. Just find bad DMs.
Yeah, it's always the
I don't
DM.
think that one's definitely not just a bad DM.
There's a
Well,
lot of bad guys in this story.
Yeah, my thing though is
Pretty
that
much everyone.
I'm speaking from experience. It always is up to the DM to really stop something like that though. Like if you notice that happened, like because you even said like, yeah, I noticed that and I still let it happen. So already I'm like that all of that could have been avoided if you looked at these two characters and looked at the rest of your party like, oh, I have a fighter and this guy teleports people away. Maybe I say, hey, don't do that. Or like, oh, hey, you guys are exactly the same character, but a wizard and a warlock. Like maybe make someone else.
And like, yeah, the DM shouldn't have allowed it, but
also like that was right after she told her friend like her whole character story, and then for her to be like, oh my god, like I didn't realize they were so similar.
I bet you knew.
You know.
That bitch knew.
She knew.
A bitch knew.
Oh, that bitch knew.
But I was saying, the DM should not have allowed it, but it shouldn't have even gotten to the point where it gets up to the DM, because then now we've got the two problem players. Whether or not the teleport guy did that maliciously, that's kind of a cool idea for a character. It just didn't work in this party.
Yeah.
Maybe he gets a pass, but the girl just flat out stealing a character. This is dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at the very least, it's uncreative in a game that's about creativity.
Yeah,
but it's also just like why? And why in the same campaign? Like, I don't know. It shouldn't have even gotten to the point where the DM had the chance to allow it, and then he allowed it.
I will say an overarching.
He not
theme
only
of
allowed it, he was like, "Oh yeah, I thought that was cool that you guys had almost the same exact character."
Yeah, I will say an overarching theme of the horror stories tends to be like the DM could have stopped it and hasn't, which is kind of why I was gravitating towards the one where like they did stop it.
I mean, the DM has power to stop these
nice.
things. The players don't in most cases.
Yeah, other than the poop thrower, a lot of these are just big.
He didn't throw it.
I mean,
he didn't throw the poop. Cody did not.
Not in
throw
that
the
story.
Poop.
He didn't.
He just let it happen.
He just
still not
pooped.
invited out here, Cody.
You're invited on the show.
No,
remotely. And
yes,
don't touch my
and I will
microphones or sit in
defend
my
you
chairs
till my dying breath. The one thing I will say, I guess, in the contrary to this story, although I agree with everyone, is that to say that like these two problem players like took away your love of playing the game, or even just your characters. I think in most cases, like the only person that can make you like stop enjoying playing role playing games is yourself. It's I mean, a lot of the times it's a perspective aspect.
Yeah, losing interest in a campaign or something like that.
Yeah.
If this one thing turns you off the game for good, you probably didn't have that much of an actual passion.
Yeah, you probably didn't really like it that much in the first place.
I mean, she did mention that like he was finally enjoying playing that character, and like something gets really hyped up for you, and then it gets taken away from you. No, it
sucks. But
that could take a little time to get.
Especially because a lot of the time, especially now, it's hard to find a campaign to play, period, let alone like a campaign that you like with people that you enjoy playing with.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the downsides of like, we're in a time right now when this game is more popular than it ever has been, ever. I mean, even in the early 80s when the game was in its heyday and at its, what might have been its peak, we are at a higher popularity level for this game than we were.
Thanks, Stranger Things.
Yeah, it's also
thanks to Stranger Things.
It's been cool to be a nerd too, which is like a very different thing.
Geek chic is kind of cool. Like, nerds are not getting beat up anymore.
Nerds are hot, yo.
So when something like that is like so flooded and everyone's playing it, also all the assholes and all the people who don't understand that there's an etiquette to this, they're playing it too. That's why finding a good campaign can be really hard. And you keep running into people who want to steal your characters and teleport all your guys away.
Yeah, and that's the main thing. That's on the DM.
And poop in your kitchen.
When I run games, I won't even let two players play the same class. Like,
no, that's to be like,
why would you want to?
Really, you really shouldn't do that. Like,
because it's what you're gonna get is like you're gonna get the same builds. You're not gonna same characters in a session. I kind of, I don't have like a rule against, but I strongly discourage it because you want some party variety.
Yeah.
It builds for good storytelling.
Unless, obviously, if it's a themed campaign. I've heard some excellent podcasts, actual play podcasts, where they all play monks, and I think only one of them multi-classed.
Yeah, like if you're all doing something, but if you have like, a fighter, a rogue, and like, two rogues and a fighter, like you need the healer or a druid. There's a lot of other classes to play.
Yeah. Well, the campaign's not built to
be
like
a
theme.
Yeah.
It's also, we'll send a shout out to podcast Bombarded, where they're all playing Bard multi-classes, and they're fantastic.
They really should have called it Oops All Bards.
Those bards are the best.
They did call the on that pod, they did call the monk campaign Oops All Monks.
Good.
I'm playing a ranger in a campaign right now where we also have a druid, and even that is close enough to where I'm like, maybe I'm just gonna walk into a trap and roll up someone new.
Yeah.
But we finally hit a point where our character styles diverged a little bit. And now we kind of feel like our own characters now.
Nice.
I think there are certain situations like people playing clerics. If you're being clerics of different deities, I think honestly that's always fun.
If you lean into it, absolutely.
Yeah,
start having a little infighting.
The game D&D is only really fun if you lean into it.
Point taken.
Yeah, I mean, if you just like kind of sitting back and being yourself, like, I mean, I get like role playing is such a big part of it. Like, just don't be afraid to get into your character. Like, just be whatever you want to be.
That goes for life too.
But don't be fucking weird.
Be who you want to be. Lean into it. We're going to wrap things up on that little tidbit of life advice.
Yeah, we got some live, laugh, love or some shit.
Yeah, we're gonna live and laugh at things.
Keep living, keep laughing, keep loving.
Next week we're gonna do some more character builds. We got to figure out what we're gonna do. I got a couple ideas. We'll pitch to you guys after we finish recording. But until then, go follow us on Instagram. That's at Curmudgeons and Dragons. We do post D&D memes every single day.
Spicy memes.
One weird thing that I noticed, a lot of our posts, we don't have a whole lot of followers. So we're getting anywhere from 10 to 20 likes on each of these posts. Unless there was 2 memes that I posted that both used screenshots from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And one of them got over 500 likes and one of them got over 300 likes.
9-9?
Nice.
9-9. So
Good shit.
we are now going to become a Brooklyn Nine-Nine meme Instagram page.
Does that mean I got to start watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
It's worth watching.
Throw Sopranos in there too. That'll get some stuff.
I had one from The Good Place too, and that didn't really get much traction. But
do boobies. People like boobies.
If you have ideas for the show, if you want to just want to say hello to us, you can send us an email at curmudgeonsanddragonspod@gmail.com or send us a DM on Instagram. Show is proudly affiliated with the tabletopgameshop.com. Use your code curmudgeons, get yourself a little discount on your next set of dice. We did.
Get them.
And without spending any money, you can share this show with your friends and you can give us a rating. It really helps us out with Apple discoverability. If you just drop a rating, doesn't cost you a thing. You can do it right now.
Yeah, give us 1 star because we're number 1. Right? Is that?
Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. We're number 5. I would even take number 5.
We will always be number 5.
Yes.
Yeah. But if you get 5 stars, all too close together, they'll collapse into each other and make a black hole. It's better to be.
Yeah, that's what we want.
We don't believe in science here.
Yeah.
This is a fantasy setting.
Hashtag show me the curves.
Collapse that star, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Curmudgeons and Dragons. Our hosts are Jason Portizo, Justin Franco, Jack O'Connell, and Josie Diaz. Produced and edited by Jason Portizo. Theme music is Crunk Night by Kevin MacLeod. Link to the song and license information can be found in the podcast show notes and YouTube description. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave a rating. Curmudgeons and Dragons is a JTP audio production. Practice safe adventuring, and remember, don't trust the bard with a twinkle in his eye.
This has been a JTP Audio podcast. Thanks for listening.